What do you do when your partner's on dates? That's a common question, and one that a lot of people struggle with. Because eventually, whether you're non monogamous, as polyamorous, have an open relationship, whatever, at some point, all of your partners are going to end up busy, and you're going to be home. And then it's going to be a challenge. Well, one of the basic things you need to do in any relationship, monogamous or not, you need to learn and work on your self regulation. A lot of people learn to use their partners and rely on their partners in ways that essentially force them unintentionally and force us into being the self regulation tool. So I really encourage people take time to journal, take time to listen to podcasts that you want to listen to. Use that time for you first. I have often seen this not just play out in relationships, but even with friend groups. For a lot of younger people, especially, but even older adults, I encounter situations where we end up feeling like they went out without me. Oh, that's terrible. What do I do? Well, what you do is go inward and figure out what you need to do to care for yourself. That's part of self regulation. So, self regulation might be saying, okay, what am I feeling? I'm feeling bored more than FOMO. Okay, if I'm feeling bored, then what can I do in this moment? Well, maybe it's play video games. Maybe it's check out a Discord server I haven't been active in. Maybe it's call a relative I haven't spoken to in a while. Maybe it's pick up that hobby, that craft, that whatever that I've put aside. You know, maybe it's just writing for a little bit. A lot of the time, especially for couples that have been together for a while, we can end up relying on being able to sort of fill our space and navigate our time by it being couples time or even triads time for people in that. And that's not necessarily the most healthy or helpful thing in the long run. It's not horrible, but we do need to be able to look at situations where we are by ourselves and say, okay, this is what I need to do. You know, the fear of being alone, and not that big existential alone, but the I am by myself alone, is something that honestly I think most people do need to work on challenging because it isn't scary to be alone. It's an opportunity to be with yourself. Now, if you are afraid to be with yourself, then you need to figure out why. A therapist can help with that. A self exploration journey might be needed. But in terms of practical things, don't just say, I'll get the chores done. Make sure you keep yourself engaged in something positive for yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. And make sure you're not then, when your partners come back, saying, well, you're the bad guy because I couldn't deal with myself. And that's something that I think is really evident sometimes in unhealthy relationship patterns of all styles. You went out with your friends, I was alone. Why do you want to go out with your friends without me? Or I don't like those friends because they don't feel safe for me. That is not a helpful attitude. Your partner will always be a separate individual. It's one thing to have an issue with someone they're around. It's one thing to say, I don't really want my metamor, my partner's partner, to be forced to be around me or me forced to be around them, right? It's one thing to say, my girlfriend's best friend is someone I have beef with. So the only time I can really deal with being around them is at a large scale event, or if it's just they come by the house, pick up my partner, and they go. Blah, blah, blah. Those sorts of things. But you have to still work on where is this coming from. A lot of people, especially if there's some sort of history of whether it's infidelity, whether it's conflict with friends, etc., etc., really get upset that their partners have their own sort of need to go out. But if you cannot be by yourself, if that feels like abandonment or rejection, or it's just scary because you don't want to be alone, you owe it to yourself and your partner to take responsibility, to learn to self regulate, and to not be afraid of it. Like I said, a therapist can help. I really, really, really do enjoy meditation videos. Um, and the key with meditation is not pushing thoughts out, it's letting them come and learning to let go of them. It's learning to not just lasso a thought in and pull it. It's learning to say, oh, there it is. I'm going to let it go. That cow can just go to the field. I don't need to do anything to it. It really is. And it's hard. I have ADHD. That makes it hard. But it is important to teach ourselves those skills. It's important for us to also still be able to talk to our partner and say, this is something that really bothers me. How can we work together to make it better? Now, what you don't want to do is, this really bothers me. How can we make it so that I always feel present and included and connected to you, literally physically all the time? That's where things start to go off the rails. You know, and this shows up in different ways. If you live with a partner and they bring their partner, your metamor, to your home and you're cool with it, right? It is one thing to all hang out together intentionally. It's another where you just assume that, okay, I'm just going to hang out here. They move to another room, you follow. Like, don't assume every time people are hanging out together that includes you. Ask questions. Talk about boundaries. If you are the hinge in this situation, you owe it to your partners to be proactive and say, hey, I have noticed that when we hang out at my place, all 3, 4, however many of us end up hanging out together. Is that cool with you? If it is you're monogamous and your friends come over, or you're polyamorous and your friends come over, hey, I notice that when I invite my bestie over for happy hour at our place, that often means we go into the living room. And that is your space, I know. That is where you decompress and watch TV. Is that a problem? Or, I notice you leave when we do that. Are you okay with that? Ask questions. And if you're the partner who's kind of pushed out of the living room or kind of forced into a group hangout, try and speak up. Try and communicate, hey, this works, this doesn't. It's the same thing with the self-regulation, right? It's being mindful, it's being in tune with ourselves, trying to be attuned to others. Attunement is a practice and a skill set. How do we align and stay checked in? Even if we're neurodivergent, neurospicy, then we might need to ask more questions, and we might need to talk more about what are the signs that someone's disconnecting. We may also need to talk about what are the signs that we are putting pressure on ourselves or our partners to stay in this really hyper-connected mode. Now, it's okay to have a connecting ritual. I actually really believe in those. So if you really struggle with being alone, or have a day where everyone's busy and it just really hits for some reason, you may need to think about, okay, if your partner comes back, or if you don't live together, do you need some space to reconnect? Do you need a phone call? Do you need a text? You might not be able to get that all the time, but is this a moment where it would be helpful to say, hey, partner, could we do this? Hey, could you call me and say that you love me? Hey, can we play a video game together? Hey, can we come over and on this day, can we schedule a date? It can look a lot of different ways, but the point is to have sort of a reconnection moment, a moment where we feel attuned to them. Now, that still does not mean we don't self-regulate. We self-regulate by taking care of ourselves, by recognizing our emotions and then asking, what do we need? And it's important when we ask, what do we need? I think to practice finding an answer that's entirely reliant on us. So, what do we need? Do we need to change up our nervous system by taking a shower or having something minty or sour to kind of ground ourselves in our bodies? Do we need to put on some relaxing music? Do we need to write poetry? Do we need to take a walk? The weather's getting nice here. Take some walks. If you're able. If it's not quite nice where you are, find something else. Go to a mall, go to a shopping center, and see if that might help. Don't buy anything. Well, okay, you can. I give you permission. But don't bankrupt yourself. But give yourself some of that extra stimulation sensory-wise. Use that energy and see if that helps reduce some of what you're experiencing. I really love being able to sometimes just step outside, take a deep breath of air, once, twice, three times, let it go, roll my shoulders, stretch it out, and there you go. It's helpful, it's useful, it's quick. At the core, we are all going to at some point face the presence of loneliness. It does not have to be a space of absence. It does not have to be a space of, oh, woe is me, I'm alone. It does not have to be a space of abject denigration of self. What it can be is a space to recognize the self and recognize that, like everybody else in our lives, we are deserving of care and nurturing. And that nurturing is not reliant on another person, but on us. Now, that does not mean it's bad to seek nurturing from others. We're social creatures. We are going to do that. But we need to give ourselves the same level of nurturing we would hope for. We have to take that time and be kind and say, okay, what can I give myself? What can I do for myself now that I'm alone, now that I'm bored? And that is really hard. A lot of people struggle with it, but there are a lot of techniques, a lot of ways. Some people, I like DBT. I like DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, aware meditation techniques. And it just starts with trying things. It's not going to be 100% one-to-one, perfectly no reaction at all. But if it takes it down from 100%, oh God, I'm alone, to a 98%, to a 95%, to a 90%, that begins a process. Part of it too is, and this is a much larger topic, remember that people spending time together is not about you. Your partner wanting to be alone is not necessarily about you. I don't like to fool with people like that. Like, I love my family. I love my partners. I love my friends. Sometimes they leave me alone. Leave homegirl alone. Every day I go closer to going to the mountains and living in a moss cabin. So just remember that and have time for yourself. This is Dee of Clinically Polyamorous, Naturally Black. I hope that you have a beautiful day. Keep it moving. Keep being kind to yourself and others. And stay beautiful. Bye.